Hi, well, welcome again to the Roland's Reviews YouTube channel. I told you that we would have a very special guest today, and we do. Dr. Anton Austin from North Carolina A&T State University, of course, the numero uno HBCU in the country.
Yes.
Um, and how we do it, Dr. Austin, you can tell us, about your extensive research, everything you've learned. Tell us about your book. Tell us about, the future of agriculture and things that we can do. And then the people in the chat will be asking questions. And so as I'll be reading the questions, and then, you can give them answers or whatever. Okay.
Okay.
So let's go ahead, everyone. They're coming in now. Everyone, go ahead, hit the like button. Please share this video on any of your social media platforms so that we can get as many people as possible. Because Dr. Austin has a lot of good information to share with us today. And so school is in session. Dr. Austin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. This is and truly a honor and a privilege. You're a longtime friend of mine, my sister, my big sister. I've known you since we were at A&T, so it's truly an honor and a privilege to be with you today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us live today. I will tell you, there's nothing more important than agriculture. People talk about why is agriculture important. I say, well, if you don't think agriculture is important, try living without it. It's just that simple. Agriculture touches every part of our lives, and particularly in the African American community, when we have so many chronic diseases, it's really important that we have an understanding of where our food comes from, the origins, how it's grown, and just of the agriculture industry itself. And so Stacey asked me to come in today to talk about really African Americans and agriculture history and all. And so, did you have some specific questions that you wanted to ask me, Stacey, or just you just want me to touch on a couple things? How did you want to do?
You could just, talk about, the history and why. How you doing, Tina? They're all coming in now. Why is there such a negative? Now, when you mention agriculture, and I tell my students, so one of the courses I teach is honors food science technology. They don't equate that. I said, because I help my students get jobs as well. I said, if I get you a job at the food line down the street, that's agriculture. They have separated the two when you can't. That is agriculture. So could you talk about especially the African American population and why agriculture, has such a negative connotation? And we know it goes back to slavery, but tell us what you found in your research.
Agriculture, when you talk about agriculture in our country, when you talk about the history of America, you're talking about the history of agriculture, because agriculture has been the economic base of this country for much of its existence. And when African Americans hear the word agriculture, they really are associated with connotations of slavery, civil war, hard labor, sharecropping, when agriculture is much more than that. Yes, slavery and sharecropping are part of the history of agriculture in this country. But African Americans have contributed to the science, technology, engineering, and math of mankind's human survival, which is what I call agriculture.
Right.
We have just had so many things as far as what we contribute to scientific innovations, just to the agriculture workforce. Agriculture is our world's largest enterprise. 40% of the global workforce is tied to food and fiber in the agriculture industry. When you talk about here in America, agriculture is 23 million individuals are employed in agriculture, for everything from what I call the farm gate to the supermarket, like you were talking about, right. Restaurants, what I call big ag companies like a Hershey's, a Kellogg, right. Kraft, ConAgra. Whether you're talking about traditional ag machinery companies, or you're talking about agriculture biotech companies or pharmaceuticals, and a lot of people don't realize veterinary medicine is a part of agriculture, animal science. You name it, agriculture employs so many people. It's our country's largest industry, and then as far as North Carolina is concerned, it's North Carolina's largest industry. 17% of our workforce in North Carolina is tied to agriculture, a $95 billion industry. If you take the states next to our largest industry, which is military and tourism, they don't add up to the dollar value of agriculture. And I tell people, with as large as agriculture is, the sad part is that the workforce of agriculture does not mirror the stakeholders that we serve. If you look at the agriculture industry, it is heavily white. It lacks Latinos, blacks, Native Americans, etc., indigenous people. It is really lacking in these areas. And research will show you that you cannot effectively address the needs of your stakeholders if you don't reflect the demographics of stakeholders that you're supposed to serve. And so agriculture is so important. And really, universities like North Carolina A&T, if you go back into the history of ag, at the end of the Civil War, well, let me back up a little bit before that. In 1862, President Lincoln created what was called the Land Grant Act, signed the Land Grant Act. And really, the year 1862 was big for a lot of reasons. One, that's the year he signed the act establishing the United States Department of Agriculture, which we're going to talk about a little bit. That's he also signed what was called the Homestead Act, which is the act that really led to a lot of the settlement of western part of our country. But the most important act, probably out of all of that, is the Land Grant College Act. Now, why is that important to African Americans? Well, not only African Americans and ag, but everybody. The Land Grant Act established what we call the Land Grant College System, which is the really is what has made America number one in the world in agriculture. Before he signed this act, only the common man could not get an education, a college education. Only the children of the elite, what they call the landed gentry, plantation owners, or if you live up north, northern industrialists. What the Land Grant Act did was it created what they called a people's college, whereby which the common man at that time, i.e. farmers, and we were pretty much an agrarian society at the time, created where they could get a college education. And what they did was they gave grants of land out west to states in the east in the form of what they call land script. And I want to give you a little bit of this history so y'all can understand where all this coming from. And so they took the sale from the proceeds from this land to establish what they call colleges of agriculture and mechanical arts. Thus comes the term A&M. And the oldest of all these, the first land grant was my other alma mater, Iowa State University, which also produced somebody you know by the name of Dr. George Washington Carver, who was a black graduate and a graduate and faculty member of Iowa State. And he would have stayed there. Booker T had asked him to come down to Tuskegee and start their ag program, and the rest is history. But the reason why this is important is that when they established the Land Grant College Act, one of the stipulations in this act was that they would not give money to any states in which race was a basis for admissions. However, what they said was, we will provide money if you want to establish a separate but equal school. Well, one of the things they got right, they got the separate part right, is the equal we're still waiting on. But that's what they, 30 years after they founded what we call the 1862 land grants, which are schools like Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, Clemson, the Ohio State, University of Florida. They established the 1890 land grant universities, which are your historically black agricultural institutions. These are schools that you know as Virginia State, Tuskegee, Southern, Florida A&M, Tennessee State, West Virginia State, Kentucky State, Langston University, Lincoln University, Prairie View A&M. These institutions have produced our black agricultural scientists largely throughout the history of the United States. These institutions were charged with providing what they call the Negro population, as the term, using the historical terminology of the time, would provide the Negro population that was 30 years removed from slavery, who now own land, provided them with a college level education, a scientifically based education to help them improve their farming enterprise. So you have to look at it at the beginning of the 20th century. African Americans owned millions of acres of land. They were about 14% of the farming population. Now African American farmers make up almost less than 1% of all U.S. farmers, and it is really disturbing when you look at it. And we have had so many contributions to this thing of American agriculture, and just to break it down for you, you know, as far as statistics are concerned, if you look at right now in the United States, as far as African American farmers are concerned, African American farmers make up roughly about 1% of farmers today. And when you look at as far as the land that we own right now, African American farmers with the 2017 agricultural census, we have about 3.4 out of the 3.4 million producers in the United States. We make up about 1.4%. which is about 48,000 producers. We farm about 4.7 million acres of land, and African American producers produce about $1.4 billion in agricultural sales, which is about a little less than 1% of the total U.S. agricultural sales currently in the United States. So, but we have so many young people that want to go into agriculture now, but they have had to face many barriers in dealing with the USDA historically, which is a whole nother thing. Many people are probably aware of heard of the Pickford versus Glickman case, which Secretary Glickman was the Secretary of Agriculture under the Clinton administration, and it was settled in the late 90s. And what this was, this basically provided money to black farmers who had been historically discriminated against to help settle some loans they might have had with some outstanding government loans and what have you. But the problem was that the funding that was provided was not enough in many cases to save some of these farms. Some of these farms, it was really too late for some of them.
Right.
Fast forward now, almost 30 years later, under the Biden administration, during his campaign promises, one of the things he talked about was doing just really doing loan forgiveness, doing what we call the restoration, if you will, and black farms. Really giving what's the word I'm looking for? When you give money back. I'm trying to think of my word. Anyway, basically what they were trying to do is pretty much make the playing field equal again, wipe out all the black farmers. Reparations. That's what I was trying to think. Reparations. Okay. Trying to bring in reparations for black farmers, but there's been a problem. Many white farmers out here are now countersued and say, "Oh, no, that's illegal. That's racist." I'm like, well, wait a minute. There wasn't any problem as long as the black farmers were having a hard time, but now you having an issue because now we want to make the playing field level. But you only talk about a very minute, small group of people. But you have to understand, with all the agricultural systems in our country and really law is set up on a Eurocentric model that really works against the African American farmer. So I will tell you that we as a people have got so much that we contribute to this society, but we have got to have an equal playing field in this thing for agriculture because it's important for our communities to be involved in agriculture, grow your own food, know where your food comes from. And I will tell you this from an agricultural literacy perspective, agriculture encompasses everything from animal science, plant science, forestry, water quality, nutrition, all these things, fisheries. All these things are encompassing food, ag, and environmental science. There is something for everybody in agriculture. Some statistics even say that 1 out of every 6 jobs is connected to agriculture in one way or another. That's huge. I mean, that's really huge.
Yeah, like I said, people have, there's a disconnect. Anything with ag there's a sort of a negative connotation, but they don't understand it is agriculture. And so what you're saying in my research, and obviously having degrees in agriculture, but I did, checking up with the latest data, you're right. It's really sad. And then up under my video, when the video ends, I shared several, I always have several resources. And just what you were talking about, some of the videos had some of these African-American families talking about, they had already lost their land. And then one lady, they received $50,000. That won't even buy you a brand new tractor. What's $50,000 is nothing if you're a farmer. That is no money.
Well, one of the issues that happened with the Pickford case, sadly, is that some farmers did not take that $50,000 and put towards their debt. They bought new tractors, new trucks. And I mean, that's all well and good. That's their business. But the thing is that they had, that Pickford case really was a failure in a lot of ways because it did not totally address the debt. They should have done total debt forgiveness. If you really understand, the USDA historically was one of the most racist organizations out there as far as African Americans historically.
That's right.
And so there it's really been recently, through the different within the USDA, they have certain offices in place now to deal with civil rights issues and to address these issues. But there is still an uphill battle. And when you have lost so much land, and my family, my maternal side of my family, was a victim of some of this, foreclosures, losing land.
Yes, yes.
And the thing is, our people are not exposed to all of the government programs that they are eligible for. Some of these government programs. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the government will actually pay you to not farm your land? You can actually keep your land in conservation, what they call conservation easements.
That's right.
Well, where they will actually pay you to not farm your land, to actually keep it in what they call these agriculture districts, to really keep it from being put out for subdivisions or what have you.
Yes, yes.
But another thing too, if you own farmland, you can lease your land. You don't have to sell your land. And I know a lot of, if you study the history of African Americans and agriculture, let's just go back a little bit. If you go back to right after the Civil War, after slavery ended, okay, around 1862, 1863, when General Sherman had his march to the sea, as we call it.
Right.
When he had his march to the sea, one of the things that happened when he was marching on the way, going down through the Carolinas to Georgia, one of the things that happened was that they had a lot of slaves that left their plantations and were joining them as they, the Union soldiers, as they were marching towards Georgia and towards the sea. Well, one of the things that General Sherman did, he issued what was called Special Order Number 15. And what this did was, this really was the premise for the beginning of the Freedmen's Bureau. And the Freedmen's Bureau, if everything would have really worked out like it would have, you heard of the 40 acres and a mule. Well, that's what Special Order 15 was that it was to give 40 acres of plantation land that was open to slaves, former slaves.
Right.
And if you look at the totality of the land that they were going to allocate between the Carolinas and Georgia, it was about 400,000 acres. Well, right, as they were doing it, they were trying to put this in place. One of the offshoots of, or one of the things that happened with the Freedmen's Bureau is that it caused a lot of controversy when it was put in place, because a lot of people did not want to see this land in the hands of blacks.
That's
okay,
right. That's right.
So there was a lot of pushback with this. So what happens is that President Andrew Johnson, when he came in office, right after President Lincoln was assassinated, he ended a lot of these Freedmen's Bureau programs.
Yeah.
One of those being 40 acres and a mule. But I will tell you, one of the offshoots of the Freedmen's Bureau was that the whole system of tenant farming, i.e. sharecropping. So they said, I can't get you one way, but I'll get you another.
That's right.
Because sharecropping basically is a premise that says, okay, I will allow you to, because what President Johnson did was he gave the land back to the former plantation owners. If the plantation owners basically, like a lot of Confederates did, a swore oath to rejoin the Union and not take up arms again.
That's right.
So what they did was, with sharecropping, it's basically a system that says, I will give you a section of my land, I will give you the supplies, and you farm the land, and at the end of the year, we'll sell up. You will give me a portion of what you earn. But you also, you got to pay back, the for the inputs I've given you. But the problem is there was so much interest they put on these things, and they gave us so much credit that you were always in the hole. You never really worked out of it. Now, a few people went with my land, but you always were in the hole with sharecropping.
Always. So, in other words, supposedly you were free from slavery, but you really weren't, because you went from one slavery to another.
It was just another form of slavery. It really, and let me put this in perspective. I was born in 1975. Okay,
right.
My dad's side, which was the sharecropping side, my mom's side was the college-educated side of the family. Right. My maternal grandfather went to Delaware State and majored in dairy science and graduated in 1940 before he went into World War II. But my dad was the first on his side to go to college, but he sharecropped, and he was my high school ag teacher at Northern National High School, where I'm from in Rocky Mountain.
Right.
But to put this in perspective, my dad graduated high school in 63, okay? Right. He graduated from A&T in 67 with the Bachelor of Science in Ag Education. My grandparents stopped sharecropping around 1970 and started doing just regular wage-based farming. Just a regular wage. They weren't sharecropping more. They just started just working for one of the local farmers. But and I was born in 1975. So you look at this. My generation, the Generation X, was the first generation not to be to do sharecropping.
Wow.
Do you think about this? We are only one generation removed from sharecropping. I mean, put that in perspective for you.
Oh, wow.
The Civil War ended. Oh, you think about this. The first slaves came here in 1619. And, of course, we know about Hannah Jones and her book, the 1619 Project. Right. And so if you think about the first slaves came here in 1619, bring that up on almost, let me see, so they, about another 250 so years to the Civil War, 1865, then add 100 more years to that. So really, you think about, we really are just coming out of the sharecropping in the last really 40 years. Right. I mean, if you really think about that, right? Think about that. We are not that far removed from that, and so it is hard to recruit young African Americans, and Latino population too, because they associate ag with immigrant labor. Okay, so It's just on the other side, the same thing, right?
Same thing.
But what we try to do with institutions like A&T is expose students to the science, technology, engineering, and math careers in agriculture. Right. There are over 250 unique careers in agriculture, from agriculture engineering, food scientists, landscape architects, veterinary medicine, plant scientists, animal geneticists, you name it. There are so many opportunities, but a lot of our people are not exposed to these things. And so that's why it's so important that we have more African Americans, more Latinos, more indigenous individuals, more of everybody enrolled, not only in secondary agriculture programs, but also in 4-H and some of these other programs, definitely.
Right.
But we have so many contributions we have made to agriculture.
Right. So if you look at it, so from some of the things I was reading, now with more people, again, trying to take control of their situation so far as the food is concerned, obviously I teach this information, so I try to share it with as many, people as possible. People are waking up, and now just about everyone has the internet, right? Yeah. So people are looking at all these chemicals that we're consuming on a daily basis that European countries will not, they're illegal because they know they're carcinogenic, but we consume them every day. So do you, with this taking place, do you foresee a large increase in African American farmers as a result? And then, of course, what's going on with the CBD and the cannabis that people are growing for medicinal purposes? Do you see us increasing in that area?
I can tell you, we have more young people that are calling and coming to A&T every day now. Let me just, I'm going to give you just this example. I remember when we were in college, it was hard to get ag majors to actually even volunteer to go work at the farm, right? Or in the greenhouse. Now, I have these young people, believe it or not, these folks are lining up, though. Can I go work volunteer at the farm? Can I volunteer at the greenhouse? Can I volunteer in the labs? Can I get this exposure? Students now are really interested in where their food comes from, and they want to get into agriculture, and particularly urban agriculture.
Oh, yes.
There's a statistic out there that I looked at a couple of months ago out of Iowa State University Cooperative Extension, and they estimate that globally 15% of food production happens within the borders of cities now.
Oh, wow.
So what does that mean? Vertical gardening, rooftop gardening, aquaponics, hydroponics. These things are becoming more and more important every day. So young people, when we say young farmers, we're just not talking about a traditional sense of row crops and big ag. No, we're talking about more small plots that might have an acre or 2 acres of land, but they are interested in the definition of a farmer. Some people say, I think in North Carolina, I have to go back and look, but like I say, if you make at least $1,000 in income from, your enterprise, you consider a farmer or what have you. The definition varies, but let me say this to you also. Now, this is what will really blow your mind. Let's talk about this whole thing of, you hear people talk about organics, all natural.
Oh, yeah.
There's really no federal definition really of all natural organic. It really varies and some people call local ag.
Right.
You know, here's the thing. Depending on whose definition you looked at, some people consider local ag, you know, things that are grown within, you know, your local county. Some other definitions look at local foods is if the food can be driven to you within 1 day's drive.
Oh yeah.
It had to be local foods. So, but the thing is, people always ask me, well, how do I feel about GMOs, organics, and all? People don't understand. Most of your corn and soybeans grown in the United States is GMO based. But the thing about it is, scientific research has shown there is no scientific, there is no difference between quote organic versus traditionally grown with the chemical synthetic fertilizer. Because what people don't realize is that if you truly grew things truly organic foods have blemishes, they have worms, they have insects. Because they organic. Now, organic doesn't. Now, I don't want people to understand this. And you're hearing this from an agricultural professor.
Yes, sir.
Organics does not mean that you don't use sprays. You can spray on organics. You can have organically based pesticides that you spray. See, a lot of people think organic means you don't use any chemicals. No, there are chemicals used in organics, but they're just organically based pesticides. Right. But those chemicals can be just as deadly as the quote. The synthetics do about. So I will tell you this thing of all natural, So some people are asking me about what's my opinion about all natural, the Impossible Burger from Burger King. I said, well, I think it would be impossible for me to eat it. I'm the type of person that it's up to you if you want to go to Trader Joe's or some of these places and pay all this high price for this stuff. I'm telling you, it's not worth paying all that extra money for all these quote organic, naturally grown. I tell folks, it's like I put it this way. Somebody asked me, well, what about all natural beef? I said, well, have you ever met a cow that wasn't all natural? That's what I said. I mean, if you really think about this, all these labels like they have, like with chickens, free range, cage free. That has nothing to do with the quality of the egg or the meat that you eat. Nothing at all. But I will tell you, there are different niche markets out here that people get into this stuff. But that's okay. There's something out there. Everybody has their preferences. And that's another thing that drives agriculture now is these niche markets. People want this organic, this GMO free, these types of things. But I will tell you, there are many opportunities in agriculture for people who want to take advantage of them. And I would just encourage young people to look at any young people out there that listen to this.
Right.
Consider agriculture for a college major and for a career. There are so many. For example, a lot of people think you have to major in biology if you want to be a medical doctor. No, that's a traditional major. But guess what? Animal science and food science prepare you even better because these are applied science.
There are applied sciences. And there's a question for you in the chat section, Dr. Alston. This is from Tina. She says, do organics have lower nitrates or nitrites? I heard that they do. So she wants to know if organic foods have lower nitrates.
So your question really gets to a question of how they're grown, how they're fertilized, and so I will tell you it depends on the crop you're growing, because even when you're growing things in the traditional way, they're grown with different fertilization rates. And now with this whole thing of precision agriculture, we do not fertilize as heavy as we used to. We do more precision fertilizer. So I will tell you, organics. A lot of people think or associate organics with being healthier. That's not the case. There's not a scientifically proven difference between organically grown versus traditionally synthetically based, crops based grown with synthetic fertilizers or pesticides.
Right. Thank you for answering that question. And those of you who are just coming in, Dr. Alston is an author, and his latest book, The Legacy of the New Farmers of America, I just got my copy, and I love it because everyone who knows me knows I love history. Dr. Alston, if you could I don't think that most people in the chat section are familiar with the NFA or the FFA. So if you could just talk a little bit about the significance of the NFA as it relates to African Americans in agriculture.
Okay.
And how the NFA, helped African American farmers when they were still around.
So thank you so much for asking us. And this really has been a personal project of mine. So the NFA, just a little bit about myself to talk about this. And I should say this at the beginning. I serve as Associate Dean for Academic Studies within the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, North Carolina A&T, and I'm also a professor of agriculture education. But with that said, the New Farmers of America, the book that Stacey was talking about, at the high school level, the student organization for agriculture, it used to be called the Future Farmers of America, now just known as the National FFA organization. Well, prior to 1965 in the southern states, and I'm making that clarification because FFA is the largest school-based organization in the United States with almost 1 million members from coast to coast, including Guam and Puerto Rico. The NFA was the black version of the FFA prior to 1965, and it was found primarily in your southern states and went all the way as far north as Delaware, all the way down to Florida, over to Texas. And each one of your states' historical black land-grant colleges served as the state headquarters. The NFA was founded in 1927 at Virginia State College by Professor G.W. Owens, who is the head black, or they say Negro agricultural teacher trainer at that time. And he was encouraged by Dr. H.O. Sargent, who was what they call a special agent, or was the agent for special groups out of the U.S. Office of Agriculture Education, the Ag Ed branch of the U.S. Office of Education out of Washington. And G.W. Owens held, Stacey, I don't know if you saw this in the book or not, Professor Owens was unique in one way. He was the first black graduate of Kansas State University in 1899. And his first job out of Kansas State, he was hired by Booker T to run their dairy program. Well, his boss, who was over there at Ag Experiment Station, was none other than George Washington Carver, who served as the keynote speaker at the first National NFA Convention in 1935 in Tuskegee. But the NFA, at its height, had over 60,000 African-American youth enrolled in secondary vocational agriculture education. Mm-hmm. The organization, because of a couple of things, the Brown versus Board of Education Act of 1954, and of Topeka, Kansas, that is. That's and right. President Johnson signed the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which mandated all public school entities had to merge. It was because of that the NFA and the FFA had to merge, but the NFA was responsible for many young African Americans, and it was only for black males at the time, because females had to take what you call family consumer science, i.e. at that time, home economics, right? But many African American youth majored in agriculture because of their membership in NFA and their enrollment in secondary agriculture. But not only that, it was also because the ag teacher in many communities was almost like the preacher. And he held that kind of significance and prominence. And it was the ag teacher that encouraged a lot of people to go on to college, period. Just not go into agriculture, but just go to college in general. But this book, The Legacy of the New Farmers of America, is with Arcadia Publishing. My co-author is Dr. Dexter Wakefield, who is the Associate Dean of Agriculture at Alcorn State, and my frat brother, Phi Beta Sigma. Yep. And Meta Cox, who's our agricultural liaison in North Carolina A&T. They are my co-authors, but let me just say this publicly, and this is in the acknowledgments. The person that I got to really thank for making sure we have the archives, because A&T serves the headquarters for the NFA during existence, was Dr. Arthur Pete Bell. Dr. Bell is still living. Dr. Bell is in his 90s. Dr. Bell is the godfather of ag at A&T, I would tell you.
Yes.
But Dr. Bell was the one that maintained these archives for many decades. And then when I came back on faculty after finishing my PhD at Iowa State, I took over this. And so myself and Dr. Wakefield, who's a Fort Valley State grad out of Georgia, his ag teacher was an NFA member also. So for Dr. Wakefield and myself, this book really had personal connections with both our fathers being our ag teachers and former NFA members. It was imperative for us that this black ag history was told. Because one of the things that we know, and Stacey, you know this, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell it for you.
Yeah.
It is so important. And so the book is available on Amazon, Walmart, Target. You can get it from Arcadia directly. But also, I will tell you also, Dr. Alvin Smallwood, who was the former chair of history at North Carolina A&T and is one of our vice chancellors now, he was the one that really helped us get the book organized as far as the formatting and everything. But I will tell you, we're very proud of this book and really trying to get that Black history out there.
I love it. And I did not know A&T housed all of those artifacts. I didn't know that until I bought your book. And my partner, Chef Fine is Wine, those of you who are in the chat today, if you're not subbed up, please sub up to his channel. He's already dropped the link for your book. It's an excellent read. If you want to know the history, I absolutely love it. Those of you who are here, please go ahead and hit that like button, share this out. This is excellent history that we need to know. So that we have the link. And those of you who came in late, if I had all of Dr. Alston's information, if you scroll to the very top of the chat section, his biography information is there, where he's from, all of his degrees that he's obtained, all of the honors and awards that he has received. If you scroll all the way up to the top of the chat, you will see that. So you will see how distinguished he is.
And Stacey, let me just add this on too. Agriculture is the one industry. We always talk about how there are more jobs in agriculture than people to fill them. If we were to take all the courses of agriculture annually, and I'm talking about at the bachelor's level and higher,
right,
we would produce about 30-some thousand graduates for 60,000 jobs annually. Even during the 2008 recession, the one industry that continued to grow was agriculture. Because people have to have food, clothing, and shelter.
That's it.
And that's why I always say agriculture is so. Let me just give you this. Let me give you this last fact here. According to the UN, by the year 2050, there's going to be almost 10 billion people on this earth, between 9 and 10 billion. In order to keep pace with this population growth, they're saying that we're going to have to produce more food in the next 30 years than we have in the previous 10,000 years combined. Let me repeat it one more time. We're going to grow more in 30 than we have in 10,000 combined.
Wow.
I mean, I want you to really think about that. The UN FAO, which is the leading food organization in the world, this is what they predict. But and most of this growth is not going to happen in America. It's going to happen in Africa, the Asian Pacific realm, these areas. And so we really have to be cognizant, and our students have to really have a global orientation, because our students are going to have to work on a global scale.
That's right. That's right. And Dr. Alston also wanted to mention what a lot of people don't realize is that due to mechanization and computers and technology, only 2% of the population is feeding the other 98% of us. Most people don't realize that. That's how efficient we've become. There's a question here in the chat section for you as well from Tina. She says, how much farming today is corporate farming? Because we know they pretty much, the mom and pop operations, we don't have too many of those. She said, what is your opinion of corporate farming?
Well, so let me say this. The majority of farms actually in the U.S. are still family operated farms. Families, but what it is, like you said, they've gotten bigger. They're bigger and they're more efficient. But most farms in the U.S. are still family owned. As far as corporate farms, and you really see a lot of this in the dairy industry with milk production, there's a place for all of it out there. Walmart owns farms. A lot of people don't realize that Walmart has, McDonald's has farming operations. This is something that a lot of people really don't realize. My opinion for corporate is that there's a place for it just like everything else. But I would say to you that it's imperative that agriculture for the large part still needs to remain in the hands of family-based operations.
Okay.
It's really important that it does that for community economic development and viability.
Right. So I guess you answered Tina's question. Patrick Faulkner, one of your eggs, do you remember? He has a good question here. Do we still have living NFA members, and do they ever get together to meet? Because he said he sometimes runs across former NFA members. So I guess he wants to know, do you have any numbers so far as those still alive?
I don't have exact numbers, but let me say this: it's interesting that you would ask that question. I actually met a gentleman. I won't say his name here on publicly out here, but I met a gentleman. Well, no, let me back. Let me say this. Let me say this.
Okay.
The youngest NFA members. So the NFA ended in 1965. So if a person was a freshman in 1965, they would be about 73, 74 years of age now.
Okay.
My father, who passed away early this year, he was 77 when he passed. He graduated high school 63. So there's still a lot. There's still a lot of former NFA members out there, but of course we're losing a lot of them every year.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting is I actually met a gentleman earlier this year, who's actually one of my dad's former classmates, and he was the 1962 National NFA president. He's still living. He's right here in North Carolina. He's from around the Hickory area. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head, but anyway, he's an A&T graduate, has a Bachelor of Science in Ag Economics, and graduated with my father. And he was actually the DJ for A&T's radio station when he was at A&T. As a matter of fact.
Goodness.
And look, and I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna think of his name as soon as we get off this thing. It'll pop in my mind. But there are still a significant amount of NFA members out there, but they're getting older and they're dying every day because they're their age.
Yeah.
So yes, they're still out there, and that's why it's so important that we get this history told, if you will, because it's imperative that we tell this history and we give people their flowers while they're living.
That's important, Dr. Austin. That's very important. And so what do you foresee? Do you see or do you think there's more that we need to do? We talked about the Pickford Glickman lawsuits. Is there? What about now? That was if you look at the years that covered. What about for all the other? Is there any way we can go back, or is there anything else in the works so that look at all the land from some of the reading I was doing? Black farmers lost like millions of acres of land. So is there anything in, that coming down the pipe, as it were, to sort of alleviate that or try to, because one of the videos I shared under my, in the description box is a family that were able to go back and once they got their settlement and repurchase their land. So is there anything else in the pipe coming down the road or what?
The main thing right now is the whole thing with the Biden administration that's tied up in litigation right now. I will tell you that the land that was lost, unless that land is, let me say this, unless the current owners are willing to sell that land is pretty much lost. It's gone, and unfortunately that is the case. But the other thing is this too. Let's say that even if that land is open, a lot of the younger generation now that has no desire to go into that. They can say, okay, I got this land. Now what am I going to do with it?
Sell it.
Yep. So, right. Sell it. Exactly. And that's why when you look at the history, if you go back to the 40s and 50s in particular,
wow,
the African American population had what we call the Great Migration North. And now, to get factory jobs, to get away from the sharecropping and the menial labor and all. But now what you're seeing now is what we call the Great Remigration.
They're coming back.
Yeah, people are coming back because as Grandma said, they got those good retirements. They're coming back. They want to get into farming. They want to really reclaim their roots, if you will. And so we get a lot of calls from people who are wanting to get back into agriculture, and so they want to know, what can I do? What are some things some crops I can grow? How can I be profitable?
Right.
Agriculture is just not something you jump into. It's like any business. You have to have a plan. You need to look at the market. What is the market like? What are the inputs? What do I need to get into this? I mean, these are types of things that you really have to be aware of.
Right. So do you foresee, more African American? That I heard what you said earlier. It's so sad, even down here where I'm teaching. Thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, folks, please hit the like buttons. Thank you. So it's so sad now down here where I'm teaching, in Harnett County. When I moved down here in 2002, It was, it was a lot of farmland, cotton, soybeans, of course, tobacco. A lot of that now is gone. It's, housing development, strip malls, you name it. So what happens is the older people die, and you know what? Like you mentioned, the younger people, they just want the money. They don't care about the land because they don't want to
Exactly.
go farming.
And if they're doing it in the white population, what we're gonna do in our population is because
Same
we,
thing. Right.
at least the white population, their families were for on a larger to a large extent were still farming the land. But
Right.
even people I know in the white community are still are selling land because
Right.
there people getting older or people just getting out of farming. I on my way to work, I live in Reedsville, and
Right.
when I take the back way from Reedsville, Reedsville is my wife's hometown. When I
Right.
leave Reedsville going to Greensboro, that's about a 30-minute drive. I have places that they were dairy farms just 3 years ago, subdivisions now.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
give you another example. On
Oh,
29 South, going from Reedsville to Greensboro,
yeah.
when you go past Brown Summit,
Oh,
up until last year, there was a Hereford cattle farm on the right. That land now has been cleared for a Procter and Gamble distribution center.
oh,
This
wow.
is be right here in Greensboro. Okay, a huge. I will tell you, the guy. I guess the guy figured out that Procter and Gamble pays a lot more than what he was going to make off of cows per acre.
You know.
you know, so there are young people wanting to get into agriculture, but you got to understand the model now is more urban ag, more small ag.
Right.
I will tell you a young man I'm really proud of, and I would encourage your readers to really look up this person, Kamal Bell. Kamal runs Sankofa Farms out of Durham.
Okay.
Kamal is an A&T graduate, one of my former students. Kamal actually, and I'm trying to see if I can find my book here. I can't seem to find my book, but he was actually in a book put out by the person who wrote Queen Sugar.
Right.
She did a book, and she actually profiled individuals. I don't know if you've seen that book or not, but the person who did the movie Queen Sugar, she published a book profiling young African Americans who are in agriculture now. And I'm trying to find the book here if I got it in front of me somewhere. But let me see if I can put my hands on it. But
okay.
Anyway, Kamal Bell, and look and watch how I find it. Wait a minute, here it is. Here it is, right here. This is the book right here. Here's the book right here. Let me get it. Let me move it up. It says, "We are each other's harvest."
Okay, I got it. Got it.
Yeah, it says, "We are each other's harvest, celebrating African American farmers' land and legacy" by Natalie Bazile, author of Queen Sugar. Okay, so that's the book right there.
Okay.
And she's the author of Queen Sugar. Okay, but one of the people featured in this book is Kamal Bell. Kamal's in Durham. Kamal did his undergrad in animal science at A&T, master's in ag education, taught middle grades ag up in Durham until about 2 years ago. Okay. He's working on his doctorate in ag and extension ed at North Carolina State now. But here's what's interesting: he runs he's got his nonprofit business up there in Durham where he works with inner city youth, in particular black males, to teach them farming, and it's a way for them to teach them agriculture, teach them farming, agricultural science, and encourage them to go to college.
Oh, wow.
And Kamal has been featured. In fact, he was just featured in Ebony. But if you look him up, Kamall, Kamal Bell, look up Sankofa Farms. And if I remember right, the Sankofa bird, I know I'm going to get this wrong a little bit. If I remember right, well, in African history, with the Sankofa bird basically looks back, basically it's like reaching back.
Right.
If you will, the whole premise of the Sankofa bird is that he's always reaching back. Okay. You know, trying to bring others behind them, if you will.
Right. Okay. Let me see. Rochelle Arrington, you know Miss Rochelle.
Oh, very well.
Oh, yeah. She has a question. What is A&T doing to help this problem?
Well, as far as black farmers are concerned, we have a couple of things we're doing. We have what we now our new center that we established called the Small Farms Innovation Resource Center, and this is a virtual center that we're really kicking off to really help young entrepreneurs that want to get into farming.
Okay.
Whether African American, white farmers, any demographic that wants to get into farming, we have that virtual center, and we're running it through our extension programs as well. So that's one of the things that we're doing. The other thing I would say, through our cooperative extension programming that we have out in the fields, we're trying to expand that more. But we really got a couple, and then we have some new things in the works that we're gonna have going on.
Okay.
So as they say, stay tuned.
Okay, and you still have the small farmers resources. I've been on those tours several times in the past, and I always loved them.
Yes, we still do.
Still helping the limited resource farmers.
And that's the mission of the 1890 land grant institutions is small limited resource producers.
Right. All right. So I don't want to take up, any more of your Sunday, because you're like me, you're still in the workforce and you got to get ready for tomorrow. But I do thank you, and just know my subscribers, they were asking so many questions. They love the show. And we hope this isn't your first and only visit to the show. As you continuing to do research and write books, we want you to come back to the Rollins Reviews YouTube channel, because what we do is history. And it's obvious you love history as much as I do, and as much as the subscribers do as well. So we enjoyed it. And you have the video. Please feel free to share it with your peers or your students. If there's anything I can do, if you need me to do anything virtually or whatever the case may be, so far as your students are concerned, you have all my contact info. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, Stacey, it's been a pleasure as always. I love you, my sister, and I thank you for having me up here today.
My Sigma brother. Yes.
Yes.
So everyone, let's thank Dr. Alston. Everyone's saying thank you. Thank you. They're thanking you for the history that you shared. They're saying, oh, he knows his stuff. Oh, yes, he does. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone. And thank you for spending your very valuable time with the Rollins Reviews YouTube channel. And we'll see you next Sunday at 4 o'clock.
Take care now.
You too. Thank you.